I never thought I would find someone in my closet. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but that's exactly what happened. I still wake up some nights, drenched in sweat, remembering the moment I opened that door and saw him staring back at me. It was like a scene from a horror movie, but it was all too real. It started out as a normal day. I had just moved into a small apartment in the city. The place was cheap, but it had a certain charm. The walls were a faded yellow, and the wooden floors creaked with every step. I was excited to finally have my own space. I spent my first few days unpacking boxes, placing my few belongings around the apartment, and trying to make it feel like home. I loved the freedom of living alone, the quietness, and the solitude. But there was one thing about the apartment that bothered me. The closet in my bedroom was strange. It was deep, dark, and had an odd smell, like something had been trapped inside for a long time. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just an old building with old smells. I hung my clothes up and closed the door, pushing the feeling of unease to the back of my mind. Weeks passed, and I settled into a routine. I would go to work, come home, eat dinner, and then watch TV or read. I rarely had friends over, preferring the quiet. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to feel like something was off. It was subtle at first. I would hear faint noises at night, like whispers or soft shuffling. I brushed it off as my imagination, but deep down, I felt a growing sense of dread. One night, after a long day at work, I came home and plopped down on the couch, exhausted. I turned on the TV, but I couldn't concentrate. The noises were getting louder. I could hear them more clearly now, like someone was moving around in my apartment. My heart raced. I told myself it was just the old pipes or the wind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I decided to investigate. I walked around the apartment, checking every room, but everything was as it should be. I opened the bathroom door, checked under the sink, and even looked behind the shower curtain. Nothing. I moved to the kitchen, checked the cupboards, and peered into the fridge. Still nothing. I felt silly, but I had to be sure. Then I stood in front of the closet. My heart pounded in my chest. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I reached for the doorknob, feeling a chill run down my spine. With a deep breath, I opened the door. The darkness inside seemed to swallow the light from the room, and I squinted to see. At first, I thought it was empty, but then I noticed a figure crouched in the corner, hidden behind my clothes. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The man looked disheveled, his hair unkempt and his clothes dirty. He was staring at me with wide, wild eyes, as if he had been waiting for me to find him. I couldn't move. Fear gripped me, and I felt like I was going to faint. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. He didn't say anything at first, just sat there watching me. I finally found my voice and shouted, "What are you doing in my closet?" My voice trembled, and I felt tears prick my eyes. I was terrified. I thought about running, but my legs felt like lead. He didn't answer. Instead, he slowly stood up, and I could see the dirt on his face and the scrapes on his arms. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. I backed away, my heart racing even faster. "Get out!" I yelled, hoping to scare him away, but he just took a step forward. I turned and ran. I dashed out of my apartment, down the stairs, and out into the street. I didn't stop until I reached the corner store, gasping for breath. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and my mind raced with thoughts. How had he gotten in? How long had he been living there? I couldn't believe it was real. I was shaking, and I felt sick to my stomach. I called the police, my hands trembling as I dialed. When they arrived, I could barely speak. I told them everything, and they listened, their faces serious. They went back to my apartment with me, and I stayed outside, pacing nervously. It felt like forever, but it was only a few minutes before they came out again. "There's no one in there," one of the officers said. "Are you sure you saw someone?" I nodded vigorously. "I swear he was in my closet." They exchanged glances, and I could see they didn't believe me. "We'll check again, but it's probably just your imagination," one of them said gently. I felt frustrated and scared. I knew what I had seen. They went back inside, and I waited, my heart racing. After what felt like an eternity, they finally returned. "We searched the entire apartment. There's no sign of anyone," the officer said. "Are you sure you didn't just dream it?" I wanted to scream. "I'm not crazy. He was there, I swear." They told me to stay with a friend for the night, and that they would keep an eye on my apartment. I reluctantly agreed, feeling defeated. I didn't want to go back there, but I also didn't want to leave my home. I spent the night at my friend's place, trying to calm my racing heart, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man's wild eyes staring at me from the closet. The next day, I returned to my apartment with the police. I was still on edge, but I wanted to prove to them that I wasn't imagining things. We searched the closet again, but it was empty. They checked for signs of forced entry, but everything was locked up tight. The officers looked at me with pity, as if I were just a scared girl who had let her imagination run wild. After they left, I sat on my bed feeling hopeless. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still there, lurking in the shadows. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself. I needed to feel safe again. I decided to change the locks and put a chair in front of the closet door, just to be sure. That night, I locked my bedroom door and tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening for any sounds. I could hear the wind outside and the distant sounds of the city, but nothing else. I felt like I was being watched, and every creak of the floor made my heart race. Hours passed, and I finally drifted off into a restless sleep. I woke up suddenly, feeling a presence in the room. My heart raced as I opened my eyes, and I froze. The closet door was slightly ajar, and I could see a shadow moving inside. I felt paralyzed, unable to scream or move. The shadow grew larger, and I could see the outline of a figure stepping out into the dim light of my room. It was him, the man from the closet. I could see his face now, gaunt and hollow, with a crazed look in his eyes. He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was twisted and wrong, and I felt a wave of terror wash over me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I was trapped in my own body, frozen in fear. He took a step closer, and I finally found my voice. "Get away from me!" I screamed, and in that moment, I snapped out of my paralysis. I bolted out of bed and ran for the door, but he lunged at me. I barely dodged him, slamming the door behind me and locking it. I ran down the hall and pounded on my neighbor's door, shouting for help. They opened the door, startled and confused. I stumbled inside, breathless and terrified. I told them what happened, and they quickly called the police. When the officers arrived, I was shaking uncontrollably. They searched my apartment again, but once again, they found nothing. They assured me that it was probably just a bad dream, but I knew it was real. I could feel it in my bones. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stay in my apartment anymore. I was too scared. I stayed with friends and family, trying to put the pieces of my life back together. But no matter where I went, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I felt like he was still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike. After a week, I returned to my apartment to collect some things. I felt a knot in my stomach as I stepped inside. The air felt heavy, and the shadows seemed darker than before. I quickly grabbed my things, but as I turned to leave, I heard a noise from the closet. It was a soft whisper, almost like a voice calling my name. I froze, my heart racing. I wanted to run, but I was drawn to the sound. I stepped closer to the closet, my hand trembling as I reached for the doorknob. I opened the door, and to my shock, it was empty. But the smell was still there, stronger than ever. I slammed the door shut and ran out of the apartment, vowing never to return. I moved in with a friend and started looking for a new place. It took time, but eventually I found a new apartment in a different neighborhood. It was bright and airy, and I felt safe there. But even now, I still think about that man. I wonder who he was and how he got into my closet. I wonder if he's still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for someone else to find him. Sometimes, late at night, I hear noises that remind me of that time, and I have to remind myself that I'm safe now. I try to put it behind me, but the fear lingers. I can't help but feel that I unknowingly shared my life with a stranger, and that thought will haunt me forever.